Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for Harry and Harry mostly. And welcome to the last of our Commodity Outlook series that we've been running for the last 3 days with CRE Group. I hope you all enjoy the insight and expertise we received during the past few days. And if you didn't have the chance to join us before now, you can already access all the content on demand on the platform. ESG has been driving all our discussion, and we really hope that you had the chance to engage with our panelists and attendees to exchange thoughts and insights on this very crucial topic. Today marks the last day of our event online, and I'm very fortunate to spend it with knowledgeable experts looking into strategic aspects of the mining value chain. So, as I said, we'll be kicking off with Harry Fisher, analyst for battery metals at CRE Group, who is going to dive quickly into the pricing and demand of battery metals, what it means for the EV demands, and of course, what role can Africa play in the race for sustainable mining. I think a very topical discussion given the COP26 happening right now. This session will be followed by a discussion with key investors looking at operational and capital discipline in the post-pandemic environment. And we'll finish our 3-day trip by landing in Rwanda, welcoming a fantastic panel in what is considered to be the hub for Africa. So without further ado, let me kick off with Harry. Harry, welcome, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks, Elodie. Good to be here.
Good. So Harry, we know we've observed a price increase on key battery metals like lithium and cobalt during the pandemic. The energy transition towards low carbon economy has been the primary driver, and we're expecting a higher demand for battery metals in the future. So are you forecasting on your side significant investment in the next decade in those specific commodities? And for that, what needs to be done to ensure that it's a sustainable supply?
Yeah, thanks, Elodie. Yeah, so in short, we are expecting significant investment in this space, and then that's really to keep pace with demand that's growing very rapidly. So cobalt will almost double in size over the medium term. Lithium around 2.5 times the current market size. There's substantial growth even in the medium term, and that's before we see an acceleration of demand growth in the late 2020s as EVs start to reach cost parity with combustion engines and really start to kind of take hold of the automotive market. So at the moment, we're not seeing enough supply coming online to keep pace with that demand. In the next couple of years, it's okay, but as demand really starts to grow, kind of in the mid to late 2020s, where investment currently is, there's not going to be enough mine supply for both lithium and cobalt to support that demand currently. So as we've seen throughout this year, we've seen prices really start to move fairly quickly, and we expect that price growth to continue to kind of incentivize some new mine supply growth, primarily for lithium and cobalt, and yeah, we're gonna start needing to see further investment to prevent some kind of sustained deficits in the medium term.
Yeah, no, it's actually, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And we ran an online event a few weeks ago called Smart Mobility Africa, and it was one of the aspects of like, can we keep up with the race of EVs? And I think it's part of my next question is that, as you mentioned, price seems to be already climbing on the back of a strong EV sales globally. And what do you think it suggests for development of the EV industry in challenging region of Africa? Because it's something that works very well in other territories across the world, but given the shortage of supply, how do you think the market's going to look like?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say Africa will be a huge part of the EV market in the short term. There's kind of a fairly low rate of vehicle electrification in Africa at the moment, and obviously a lack of major OEMs producing vehicles kind of in the downstream. The major auto markets of kind of China, North America, and Europe are likely to dominate EVs, kind of at least in the next kind of 5 to 10 years. And that's kind of both on the EV and kind of battery production side of things. That being said, I think Africa will be integral on the raw materials end, so a bit further upstream, particularly for cobalt. Cobalt have got around 50% of global cobalt reserves in the DRC, and around 70% of supply comes from the DRC alone. So the DRC is critical for the cobalt market and for electric vehicles. And we will continue to see mine supply growth from the DRC. That's really maintaining a lot of the growth in cobalt globally. For lithium and nickel, on the lithium side, there's a few different kind of relatively well-developed projects in Mali and in Zimbabwe and also in the DRC. We've got them categorized as possible in our methodology, so they're likely to still be a few years away from reaching the market. On the nickel side of things, we've only got First Quantum's Enterprise project, which is expected to come online in kind of the mid-2020s. We haven't seen a great amount of progress in nickel projects in Africa in the last 5 to 10 years, and capital cost is really kind of a key challenge there, and kind of integrating it with some downstream capacity. So there's not a huge amount going on kind of in nickel and lithium in Africa at the moment. But as I said, cobalt's really, of course, a DRC and Africa story.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been present in the DRC for 16 years, and we know that it is a very high potential that cobalt will continue on being driven there. Nickel, I agree with you. We had also a webinar on nickel, and then most of the panelists were like, don't invest in nickel. It's not the one you should invest in.
Nickel's great. It works well in other regions. We're seeing a lot of growth in Indonesia at the moment, but it's not working so well in Africa so far.
Absolutely. So looking at my last question, and you mentioned the DRC, obviously, and it's very important for us to understand, how do you think African battery metals players, such as the DRC and perhaps South Africa, are going to influence the global ESG agenda? Because we don't want to forget that obviously mining some of these key commodities goes along some critical implementation of the ESG standards, and that's something that's going towards a greener mining principle. So what do you think? How do you think they're going to run on that?
Yeah, no, good question, and I think it's really critical for the DRC. It's more kind of focusing on the S and the G rather than the E when it comes to the DRC at the moment. I'm sure that will change going forwards, but I think everyone's aware of the kind of some of the social governance, exploitation, child labor issues that have kind of been a very sad but significant part of the DRC cobalt market kind of for its whole existence. That's due to a significant part of the DRC production coming from artisanal sources, kind of around 10% in any given year. So that obviously contributes quite a significant amount to the energy transition, to batteries, to all the end uses. So that's really what's being looked at kind of increasingly, to ensure that you can kind of get a sustainable, ethical and transparent supply chain from the DRC and to the target market, which is primarily China. We've got organizations such as the Fair Cobalt Alliance and more recently Resource, which are supported by a lot of the major OEMs and miners and end users, and also such as kind of the Cobalt Institute, for example, who are kind of pushing this agenda. But it's really kind of focusing on the social and governance aspects, and because without kind of improvements in this space, then cobalt will increasingly get taken out of future chemistries on the battery side, and it is already affecting some technology decisions. So it's becoming a much bigger issue.
Yeah, thanks, Harry. And then I hope the audience will join us in the next few weeks. We're running an event online as well for the DRC specifically, and I know that battery metals is something that is very much at the center of discussion, obviously linked to traceability and blockchain, which has been something quite important. Later today, we have a session actually with the Rwandan government and some key companies, and I know they've been very good at implementing some of the traceability and blockchain processes there, and they're looking at doing the same in the DRC. So hopefully, I will give some good light on that. But thank you so much for that very good insight. It's very encouraging for the battery metal, even if, as you mentioned, the supply is not catching up enough on the demand. It's a very interesting commodities to be in at the moment. For key end users. So thank you, Harry, for your insight today. It was a pleasure to have you with us, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much, Elodie.
Thank you.
Cheers.